Hello, and thank you all for joining us today. Let's go ahead and get this session started. My name is Michelle Hayes, and I'm your organizer and MC for today's session. Your host today is Talari Senior Director of Product Marketing, Neil Abogado, and our special guest today is Tim Goblish, Telecom Manager at the leading healthcare practice services company, Benevis, LLC. With the emergence of cloud-based application and new WAN architectures that leverage multiple internet links, Talari recognizes that branch offices are facing new demands and increased complexity. Together, Neil and Tim will show you how you can find serenity and simplicity when it comes to your branch office deployments. Today's session is being held in broadcast mode, which means that all the lines are muted. If you wish to ask a question, please don't hesitate to type it into the question or the chat windows, and we'll be able to address all questions at the end of our session. In addition, today's session is being recorded, and we'll make that available within the next few hours. Well, those are my housekeeping announcements, so let's go ahead and get this started. Welcome, Neil.
Thanks, Michelle. And at this point, what I'll do is we'll give you a brief overview of what we're going to cover over the next 35 or so minutes. So the first thing we'll touch on is we're going to give you an overview of what is a branch office simplification solution, what are some of the challenges and drivers in the marketplace for enterprises in particular to pursue this type of technology in their environment. We're going to then follow up with a walkthrough with Tim from Benevis, where he'll chat a little bit about his experience of taking some of the technologies we're going to touch on and rolling them out into a production environment. And then we're going to wrap with a summary and question and answer session. So with that, we'll just get started with the opening section. So what we've done is we've gone through and we've talked, we have a lot of enterprise accounts, we talked to analysts, and there's a trend that we're seeing come back in with the feedback that we're receiving from both of those audiences. And some of this stuff I think is not going to be too much of a surprise, although some of the impact it's having may be something you've not thought through yet. What we're finding is obviously with the growth and emergence of cloud and internet technologies, there's an increased level of complexity in the branch that's being brought to market because of this. Now, how so and what are some of the drivers? Well, we have one here. Increased use of cloud application services, what we're finding is it's actually causing things that are moving off of the traditional data center in-house model. When they make this transition, there's a loss of visibility and of control. And from an IT perspective, that causes worry over loss of control is one of the results of that. The second thing we find is increased direct use of internet links. Typically with the branch environment, we're finding there's a primary MPLS link and an internet link, but that's usually relegated to a secondary status for backup purposes, maybe an IPsec type of VPN backup in case the MPLS network fails. Well, because of the emergence of cloud, a lot of customers are looking to use that internet link as an active link and go directly from the branch, primarily for quality of experience. You can reduce latency and other things by going from the branch directly to the internet app instead of hitting another location, maybe calling back into the corporate data center as an example. Now, but when you go and leverage direct access, there are increased concerns now about security and reliability in the branch for those applications and the access. The next challenge, high cost. So right now, the branch environment typically has, the feedback is the customer's on kind of a treadmill. Every 3 to 4 years, they're refreshing the hardware that they typically have deployed. It's relatively costly. And they'd like to find a way to bring in the next generation of services and some of the incremental services that they are requiring to support some of the things we've already talked about with the direct internet access, but do it more cost effectively. Because right now they have concerns about how they're going to meet basically their budgetary requirements within their environment. And the last thing that is a challenge that we hear about is while they're trying to do more in the branch, enterprises and IT in particular, one thing is not changing, the amount of expertise that is in the branch to actually support the things that are being deployed. And so typically on-site support is limited or non-existent. And so as these things are coming to market and these technologies being brought to bear to help address these business issues, they're frustrated because either there's a lot of people getting on a lot of planes, which is not very cost effective, or they're having to find alternate means to try and make this work. But it's a challenge that they have to deal with. Okay, so how to address these issues? Well, the first thing is, a couple of solution options will be go through and just leverage point vendors, best of breed vendors, let's say, for a variety of services as they come into play. The challenge here is that it's going to be relatively complex because most of the time these solutions are not going to be well integrated. And also you're going to have a lot of potentially, well, boxes, either virtual or physical, that you're going to be deploying, managing, administering, purchasing. So there's a lot of work that will be involved in trying to bring this solution to bear. And so that will limit its scale, and it really does also introduce complexity. Centralize the services in the data center. This is the primary model that most enterprises start with, which is we're just going to backhaul everything. We've got the services, such as, let's say, firewall and security services already up and running in the data center. But as we touched upon earlier, that may not meet the quality of experience, especially if you have an international type of a deployment. Backhauling things to a regional or central site, you can introduce a lot of latency, actually, that impacts user satisfaction. And thus, there's a performance issue with this approach. The other one is cost. You're now going to be putting traffic on the wire, if you will, twice. Once to backhaul it from the branch into the data center, and that'll be one WAN conversion. And then the next one is going to be when you send it out to the internet from the data center site. So you're paying twice basically for that traffic to get serviced. Not very cost effective. Another is you can just maintain existing services or solutions and add to them. Looking at the previous comment, we're finding the feedback is that's usually pretty costly. And once again, that may not be the desired approach because business as usual or approach as usual in the branch, once again, is starting to become a little bit financially prohibitive to continue to pursue. And the other point is, in many cases, these solutions may not also be very easily centrally managed, which is another thing that's going to come in as a part of the solution when we talk about the limited on-site support. And finally, well, we're seeing an emergence in looking at the use of cloud services directly for a lot of things. Now, cloud services have a role and a place, but to do a wholesale transition from the branch for almost all the services, most enterprises aren't ready for that. And the other part is, but basically on control and management, these are usually shared environments. The other feedback we get is that when you go down this path, there also is quality of experience issues. You may not be able to maintain and dictate the performance levels you need to keep your users happy by taking this approach. So once again, a couple of options that are available that you may choose to pursue, but we actually think we've got a better option to help you with some of these challenges that we've just raised. Now, a little bit about Talari and our mission statement at this point. So what we're focused on, and we started the company focusing on building a better WAN, was basically where we approached, and we've extended that to support a lot of new services and technologies that we're going to touch upon as we go through in order to expand our solution. But what we're trying to do is engineer the branch and the internet to deliver cost-effective services and a fail-safe WAN that provides superior business application availability and resiliency. So you've got it right there. I've just read it to you, but it gives you, kind of where we're approaching this problem, and basically what we have to offer you as a part of your branch implementation. Okay, so how do we fix the complex branch? There's a couple of things. What we've done, I'll talk about the specific services that we have in a moment, but we've taken quite a few of the more common services that are being either have been deployed or are being introduced into the branch, and we've enabled them on a common platform, a common appliance. Okay, and so that makes it easy to deploy. It's also cost efficient, relatively speaking, having a single device go in with one license that covers all of the services as an example, so it makes it very easy to consume, deploy, and cost effective. Next, we have a centralized management and reporting infrastructure, which, as you would expect, if you do not have IT resources located on site or very limited IT resources located on site, you're going to want to do a lot of things back at the main data center or regional locations where IT is well represented, and having a centralized infrastructure is going to be key to that, and we offer that. So we have a centralized controller-based architecture and management platform that allows for really easy management, fast management and provisioning of an entire network and branch infrastructure from one or two locations. So makes it very easy to help with that type of situation. Next, technology alliances that extend our solution to support best-of-breed partnerships. So one of the things we've done is we've recognized that Talari may be a new name for you, or may be a new name when it comes to thinking of, let's say, firewalls, which we're going to touch on here in a minute. And you may already have an incumbent vendor, maybe like a Palo Alto, that you work with. What we've done is, as a part of our solution, We understand that that's going to be, a very common situation, in fact, and so we've partnered with some of these folks, and Palo Alto is an example of one that we've already have an established relationship with, where we can offer solutions that highlight how we can work together with their security services, and both at a technical and at a business level, to make, basically offer the services that you require for your branch environment. And finally, a single software license for all services on any platform. So this makes it really easy and gives you some investment protection when it comes to deploying our solution, because what it allows you to do is take what you've purchased and roll it out in any part of your environment. And as you transition, which in many cases you may transition from physical appliances, you may want to go with the virtual infrastructure as a part of your transition and involve evolution in the branch. You can take all the software, which is where all of the technology and all of the capabilities that we're going to talk about exist, and take your licenses with you. And that includes porting them up to the cloud, if and when you choose to take that route as well. But you have the flexibility and the control to determine when that happens, and you're not going to be financially impacted by making that transition. So a couple of things that we can help with. A little bit of an overview of our architecture. Okay? What we've got here is basically a very simplistic high-level network diagram. And what we're going to do is we're going to learn the various components. The first one is we have a controller. I've already touched upon the fact this is the centralized point of administration. You can apply your business policy here, but basically it is the intelligence, it basically offers the intelligence to help build, provision, monitor, and adjust the network. Okay? What does it manage? What does it control? Nodes. And these are the nodes that are going to reside wherever your branch locations are. So whether they be physical on a Talari appliance, whether it be virtual on, let's say running on VMware or Hyper-V, or whether it be in the cloud on Amazon or Azure, we have appliances that run in all of those environments, and the controller can manage those. Actually, they're all the same from a controller perspective, so they're just appliances. And that's what it manages, and the appliances and nodes themselves are where the services that are being supported are actually deployed and operationalized. Next, how do these devices communicate? Now, what we highlight here, and this is a part of a standard, almost like an SD-WAN environment, which it is, we are typically finding MPLS and Internet. The Internet links are typically not going to be secured, so we build an overlay network on top of it, which encrypts all of the traffic that goes between all of the nodes, including the controller, and allows us to basically abstract away, and there's multiple benefits that this allows us to take and to offer as far as how the WAN is architected, designed, and how it's made resilient. But it also allows us, once again, to have a very cost-effective mechanism for us to communicate amongst all of the devices. Next, we have a reporting and basically an analytics platform. We call it Aware. It can take data from across the entire network, including data from the services that are deployed, aggregate them, and give you the visibility you require on how things are performing. So once again, visibility is one of the key things that you're going to need to consider as you make a transition, incorporate more cloud, both from an infrastructure perspective, how is your cloud access working as an example, and also from the services that you have up and running. And products like Aware are great tools to help you get that visibility in a very easy, centralized manner. And lastly, the partnerships. So we've touched upon some of the ones that we highlight them there with the animation with VMware, Amazon, Palo, and we've got a handful of others as well, and we're adding more. But once again, these help round out the solution as we have built and brought it to market. So the last slide is I do want to talk a little bit about the specific services that we offer. So we'll start with the first one is going to be SD-WAN, and this is a solution that we've been basically implementing even before there was SD-WAN. This was the technology. So us taking hybrid networks typically and making them business class, making them active, making them resilient. If you think back to the mission statement, all those things that we talked about there, our SD-WAN solution brings to bear. Our goal is to make a fail-safe WAN out of this so that where outages and things go unnoticed, and we think we've got the best technology on the market to make that happen. So at any rate, that's one of the services that's bundled into the solution. On top of that, a very common branch service is routing. So we do support BGP and OSPF. So once again, those are two protocols that you can bring in and implement on Talari and get the benefits of dynamic routing protocols within our appliances. Virtual routing and forwarding. So in many cases, if you have VPNs or multi-tenant environments where you have multiple either departments or customers, deployed. VRS gives you IP routing separation on a single device, and so it helps scale one device to support many customers with the isolation that is required to make sure that they're secure. DHCP services, once again, a basic, critical service that typically needs to be supported in the branch. And we support two modes here. So we can be a DHCP server in the branch and dole out addresses directly to the clients that are local. The other thing we can do is if you have a centralized DHCP architecture where the servers maybe are in the regional or data center locations, we have relay functions where we can push the requests back to that central location and take the responses and share them with the clients so that that model will work as well. Our IPsec termination is basically enables us to go in and participate with locations that have traditional IPsec VPNs. So if you need a site to host or a site-to-site type of VPN connection, you can terminate it on our device, and we offer that option today. And we find this is a typical, also as a part of emerging to cloud, where you may want to have an IPsec tunnel to either the server or the virtual site in order to support, once again, secure access to that location, potentially one where you don't have a Talari virtual appliance deployed at. So once again, it gives you that flexibility. And last, we have a stateful firewall with NAT. So this is something, and some of you may have been on our previous calls, this is a question that's come up. This is something we recently introduced. But as we see the security concerns emerging within the branch as the direct internet access becomes more prevalent, our firewall is a nice tool to leverage to help, once again, provide the packet filtering and basically help secure that link so that, once again, you can mitigate some of the concerns, security concerns you're going to have with that direct access being made available. And so with that, what I'm going to do now is I would like to bring Tim in to continue the conversation. So Tim, can you tell us about how Benevis started down their SD-WAN and branch router replacement projects?
Absolutely, Neil. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on Talari's behalf and Benevis's behalf, really. It's a real privilege to be here. What is Benevis? Benevis is a leading healthcare practice management company. Essentially, we provide non-clinical support services to over 130 dental offices nationwide, and those services can include everything from hiring staff and recruiting doctors to supplying the offices with the supplies that they need to practice daily, and most relevant to me, their IT footprint. Benevis was actually founded in 2002, headquartered right outside of Atlanta, Georgia in Marietta, and we have, I personally came to Benevis in 2012 and was charged with doing a proof of concept with Talari, excuse me, at that time, and we have been a customer with Talari since 2012, and we now actually have Talari powering over 40 of our locations, more than 40 actually, and that footprint is rapidly growing. Go ahead and move to the next slide. I'm happy to share our journey on how we arrived at a Talari solution here. When I came into Benevis in 2012, the challenges that they faced were not necessarily unique to them. We were dealing with an aging telecom infrastructure at the branch level. We're paying for expensive MPLS that wasn't necessarily always delivering on its promises. We were, or I should say our branches were adding in additional services beyond general dentistry that were bandwidth hungry. We needed to leverage some more bandwidth where we could, even in the VDI environment that we tend to deploy and live in. And most importantly, near and dear to my heart, is the seamless failover and availability that we really desired and needed. As Neil mentioned earlier in the presentation, we had tried IPsec failover and with a secondary WAN link, and it just never really performed the way we wanted it to perform. But for us to even consider an SD-WAN solution, we really needed to ensure that we could bucket and ensure quality of service around our most important traffic types, which, first in our model is VoIP. Benevis is a 100% base SIP organization where we're taking and making upwards of 40,000 phone calls a day, and depending on the time of year, that could be even higher. So that traffic really needs to be priority because this is the best way in how we leverage communication with our patients the best. Is through phone calls. So I really need to make sure that VoIP traffic is really treated appropriately and prioritized. As I mentioned a few seconds ago, largely our footprint is VDI Citrix base at our branches, which consists of largely WISE terminals running in Citrix VDI sessions. So we really need to maintain that session reliability so we have a quality experience for the end user on the other side. Along with that thin client deployment at the branch level, we also do have a small deployment of fat clients at the site that will utilize a custom practice management solution that uses a SQL backend. So obviously we need to treat that traffic appropriately as well. And of course the catch-all bucket, the bulk traffic, and this is where a lot of our imaging transfer data, our imaging traffic happens. Sits in this bucket. We need to make sure we treated that appropriately, and it stayed lower in priority as compared to the other services. If we go ahead and move to the next slide. So, as mentioned, we worked with Talari over a proof of concept and a pilot of some sites with Talari appliances, and the technology proved itself very well at those locations. And in fact, we were getting the bandwidth that we needed. We were servicing the sites faster. The availability was shot straight up as we wanted and expected it to. And so we moved to an initial deployment of Talari appliances into our infrastructure, which included the T510 devices, the T730s, which is a 3-armed appliance that uses 3 different connections to create the conduit. All of this being orchestrated by T3000 devices at our data center in high availability mode. And additionally, we went ahead and implemented a DR unit at our HQ just in case we needed to shift all that traffic through our headquarters. We deployed the Talari in an inline configuration. Essentially, we had one connection home to the router that already existed at the site, and we had one connection basically homed to the Talari appliance. And we would use a SSL VPN basically on the existing router that, in case of any failures with the Talari appliance itself, we could, with the ability of the Talari when it did have an issue and it did fail, we would be able to basically take that traffic and send it over the VPN if we needed to, and that was a very rare occurrence. All of our services are backhauled. All of the LAN services, I should say, for the branches are backhauled through our data center, and this includes DHCP relay. Just about everything is traversing our data center and backhauled through the actual data center. We were essentially using Talari for optimal path routing and, of course, availability. We needed to maintain that availability as much as possible, not only to say, hey, look, we're maintaining site availability, we're up and running, we can practice, but we've got patients coming to our sites that need to be seen, and the last thing we want to do is turn anybody away because of our technology. So this is essentially a diagram of our initial deployment. You'll notice that one link is home to the incumbent router, which was existing on site. The other link home to the actual T510, creating the conduit. Not entirely overly complex, but obviously a little outside of the norm for your standard deployment that you would see in the field. So essentially, on our initial deployment, our real focus was to knock out the bad actors in our network. We had, a lot of sites out there that just were constantly having issues. We're dealing with a provider, the MPLS provider, to get out there and take care of infrastructure issues, equipment issues, what have you. We basically knocked out those sites with our initial deployment. And we ran into a situation to where we were running into a lot of end-of-life equipment with our routers that were already at the sites, and we didn't necessarily want to stay with that particular router vendor. Why would I want to replace a dumb router with another dumb router? I knew the Talari, or we knew the Talari could provide us the availability that we needed, and we knew that they could double duty as an IP forwarder. We already had these Talari appliances deployed at the branches, and they were performing stellar. It was a stellar deployment. I mean, they were doing everything we expected them to do, and we knew that the Talari could essentially do the same functionality that a router could do. Go ahead and move to the next slide, please. but I guess most importantly, what really helped us with this deployment is that the team behind Talari really believed in their technology, and that made us believe in the technology. And that moved us into the router replacement deployment. We wanted to extend our existing T510 730s to do IP forwarding, basic IP forwarding, and DHCP relay, and obviously some basic security rules, ACLs around, allowing access to various servers back at our data center, etc. We have a very strong lab environment that exactly mimics one of our remote locations where we could essentially apply the new configuration and work through each function that we needed Talari to perform. And working with the Talari team, we were able to do this actually in a very quick fashion. We addressed the team and addressed every issue with the team, and really largely the largest issue we had was around the Pixie environment and DHCP relay, because again we have a centralized DHCP model that services the branches, and we needed to make sure we can ensure that functionality if we did deploy the Talari in this fashion. So we moved through those particular issues, and we knew that if we ever, we knew that Talari sat on top of a Linux installation, and we all know that we can leverage those services within Linux and bring it into the Talari software, which the Talari team was able to do for us, essentially creating our solution that we ended up deploying out into the field. If we could move on to the next slide, please. So essentially, here's our new deployment. You'll notice that the router is out of the picture now. Both links are directly home to the Talari device, making a little bit a simpler deployment and one less box to take care of in our initial Talari deployment. We go ahead and move to the next one. So our pilot deployment. After labbing and throwing just about everything we could at it, we basically chose 3 local sites, and myself and my team would go out to these sites and we would stage the new configuration, and during the office's lunch hour, essentially we would activate the new configuration and they would come back and no one was the wiser. Everything functioned as it would, as if nothing had changed, and it's absolutely seamless. And essentially we're able to do this in well in under an hour typically. While on site, we would test everything we could possibly throw at the site, including imaging terminals in a Pixie environment, testing the DHCP relay, and failing that DHCP relay, and then moving to use the DHCP server that was implemented into the Talari device itself. We tested the security rules and ACLs to ensure that the security was properly in place, because again, we're dealing with medical. We have HIPAA compliancy that we must maintain amongst all of our branches. And of course, site availability and monitoring, which we did have to scrutinize quite a bit. We continued to monitor these new sites for a couple of months, and it was the deployment, or the pilot deployment, exceeded our expectations. So we had decided that we're going to continue to deploy Talaris, and new Talaris, any new installation would be deployed as what we lovingly call here at Benevis Talari as a router, or TAR. We did 20 new Talari sites in 2016, deployed as TAR, and we are actually now on a campaign, in addition to installing more new sites, of converting the existing inline sites to Talari as a router sites. We've got a total of 26 to convert, and we're actually more than halfway through that at this point, and working hard to get that completed by the end of the year, to be honest with you. We really had to take the time to sit down with our help desk, our external NOC, and really go through the changes, not only the topology changes, but the actual technology of how Talari works, because it is a little bit different from your normal, I've got a router with a singly homed MPLS into it, and it's just a little bit more abstract than your normal footprint that you would see at an office. So we really did have to sit down and take the time with all these entities to make sure they understood the technology and knew how to properly support it, because hey, we're busy deploying new Talaris. And we really need them to understand and get behind the device as much as we were behind the device. And one thing I can really emphasize, and this has really saved our hides in a number of cases, is our change management process. I can't emphasize using this enough in a deployment like this, is that being able to go back and see exactly what was done around a particular site is imperative around something of this complexity. You know, this is something I really can't say enough about. You know, it really needs to be in place. And it really helped us to make our deployments very seamless. We'll go ahead and move on to the next one. So the Talari appliances, we're amazed about what the additional services that they continue to add to the, and the capabilities that they continue to add to the actual devices and footprint that we have out there deployed. We are very much looking forward to implementing VRF through the devices. We actually have a wireless solution that we're looking to utilize by using a virtual Talari appliance that we're using at our virtual data center that we plan on using for patient wireless for when you come into our locations to use for public access as necessary, so we can keep that particular traffic away from our normal traffic. The new built-in WAN link speed measuring is awesome. It's really been a boon for us because you may say, or your provider that you're getting your connectivity from may say you have this, but we find that sometimes that's, or I should say most of the time, that's not the case. And this is something that keeps us from having to do averages all the time and properly provisioning. This makes actually provisioning the new link and deploying the new site a little bit quicker, and we're much more confident in the actual provisioning that we've done around the individual WAN links holding to the actual device. The firewall being placed into the new Talari firmware that's we recently got a hold of, this is actually a lot better for us simply because it's a little easier to work with. This was something in the past that was in place and worked properly, but it was kind of cumbersome. The new feature is fantastic. It works very well, and it's very much intuitive, as you would expect a firewall or most firewalls to be when it comes to creating and making ACLs around access. One thing I really have to speak of is this WAN IP discovery. I can't tell you how many times we provision new links and we get the static IP information from these providers, and we go to install. I've got a person on site and we're connecting this stuff up, and the IP information's wrong. And so we're having to stay on hold and take the time to really get the correct information, and it doesn't matter how many times we've called the provider up until the actual deployment at the site, we would still end up with erroneous IP information. Well, now we can just turn this feature on and the device automatically discovers its IP, and boom, I've got a conduit up and running. And we can start working on that site. We can verify with the provider we're working on the right IPs, and we can go ahead and do a static configuration at that point. We at Benevis are on a real campaign to virtualize as many network functions as possible. We have virtualized our SIP edge, all of our SBC controllers, and really want to virtualize as many network functions as we can into the devices as possible. We have deployed a VT800, which is the virtual appliance at our Rapid Scale Data Center, which is a virtual data center. In addition to doing the VRF, the wireless solution, we're actually looking to replace a very expensive Metro E that we use that does a site-to-site between our physical data center and the virtual data center that we do backups between the data centers on. We're actually looking to replace that link with the VT800 using the internet access we have at that location, at that virtual data center, and using the internet access that we actually have at our physical data center and creating a conduit in between the two to do backups, which we're actually piloting right now as we speak. We are absolutely excited to see what Talari has to bring to us in the future, and we expect more great things from them.
So Tim, with that, I think we're going to, well, I'll say thank you. Appreciate you taking the time and going through the very detailed description of the process that you went through. and Benevis to actually bring Talari in and basically roll it out for a couple of key projects and some of the things that you're looking forward to try and expand how we can help you within your overall branch and WAN environments. So right now we're going to wrap up the call with the last section. And so we basically have a summary, and we've got just one slide here. And all I'm going to do is, I know many of you may not be all that familiar with Talari, and we've given you a little bit of a company profile with just our mission statement, but I just want to wrap here with one slide that talks about a little bit about, who we are and basically what we've done and accomplished over, well, since our founding in 2007. So right now we've got about, actually over 4,000 customer deployments, so that's the number of sites that are up and running our technology. 40 plus of which are with Benevis. We are deployed basically around the world. We have customers and sites up in over 40 countries worldwide. We have been shipping products for, well, 9 years, since 2007. What that means, and while that's a great stat to throw out there, we're actually up to our 6th major revision of code, and we've gone through multiple hardware revisions that have been tested in production environments, such as the one that Tim has mentioned, and we've been up and running in production environments with many of our customers for many, many years. We take that input, we put it back into the product so that as we develop our next generation of software and hardware, it's based upon, in many cases, customer feedback from production live environments, which we think gives us a really good leg up to make sure we're addressing key issues within our portfolio that customers are experiencing today. Beyond that, we have the mission criticality. One of the things we like to highlight, we talk about availability and resiliency, and Tim touched upon this as well. But there's other groups where the resiliency is critical for their environments. And for example, we highlight here, we have in the US, there's 911 call centers which handle emergency calls. And in states like Texas and Metro Phoenix area, we have been inserted in, and we support all of the calls that are being handled by those 911 call center environments. So Houston, Texas, Dallas, the Metroplex, all running on our technology. Now that's we think of really high, standard that we have been able to meet in order to go into those environments, because once again, these calls literally are life and death, and they run over Talari. And then last, and this is feedback we get from a lot of our customers, and is that they really appreciate what we have been able to deliver, and our goal is also to make sure that they're happy. And we highlight that with the tagline underneath the slide title, that we have a lot of feedback and quotes and things we can share with you that, we care about our customers and they care about us. So with that, I am going to wrap up the slideware, and we're just going to move right into the Q&A section, part of the agenda. And with that, Michelle, I will hand it back to you to moderate the questions that we have had come in.
Great. Thank you, Neil. Yeah, I do have a couple of questions for each of you. Let me go ahead and start with some questions that I'm going to have Tim address. So Tim, one of the questions is, why did you go with Talari versus other solutions out there?
Well, I have to say, as mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, when I came in, my boss, Mark Blomquist, who we consider to be the oracle around here, was already looking into Talari when we came aboard, and I believe he was very comfortable with Talari's dealings in the SD-WAN sector. Knew they had been around for a while, and had I would assume many great technical conversations with them, leading into his want to explore bringing devices into our infrastructure. I believe he was impressed with again the team and the technology displayed by the team before our proof of concept that we actually deployed into the infrastructure originally.
Okay, great. The other thing is around the maintenance. So how many people are involved in maintaining the Talari solution, and was it a difficult learning curve to get people up to speed?
I wouldn't say it was necessarily a difficult learning curve. It was just more of an abstract. It's a little different, again, than your single router with one connection home to it. You look more of at your bandwidth as an inventory as opposed to just a connection. And it is a little bit different way of thinking. But as far as getting people up to speed, no, I mean, it was a relatively quick transition for most people that we brought in. I right now have 2 others on my team, and additionally we do have an external NOC that we, again, like I said in my particular part of the presentation, we did have to sit down and take the time to educate them a bit on it. But these are seasoned engineers that really understand the concepts that we were talking about here. So it was relatively seamless. Additionally, we also have an internal help desk, which we did have to go through the same education that we did with our external NOC as well.
Okay, great.
Because they are our front line.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. And Neil, I have a couple of questions. The first one is regarding our native firewall capabilities as compared to our partnership with Palo Alto. So in other words, we have a firewall. Why do we need to work with Palo Alto?
So, well, there's a couple of things, and we'll talk briefly about how we position the firewall. So our firewall is targeted more from a scale and performance perspective to go into a branch environment. So if you got a big honk in Palo Alto in your central data center site, you're probably going to want to maintain that. A couple of things is the security services that we offer. So if you're looking for a robust intrusion detection system, as an example, as a part of your security portfolio, which many of you may be, especially in your central data center location, you're probably going to want to stick with Palo. We've got really good and robust packet filtering. We're stateful firewall, right? So that's usually, opening the ports, watching the sessions go through, monitoring them, and that type of thing, and doing packet filtering and denies based upon the rule set that's been established. And that's where we fit in. So it's been architected and built, as many of our services, to primarily go into the branch environment, which we expect to be, smaller scale and smaller and lower resource requirements when compared to a big data center. So that's one of the places where we position it. And so in this case with Palo Alto, you can maintain them obviously as that multi-service device in the data center where you need the performance, and then we would be positioned in the branch offices cost effectively because, once again, we're basically a part of every Talari appliance has our firewall shipping on it at no extra cost. So.
Great, thank you. Now, how are the services such as firewall and routing priced?
Well, kind of a follow-up to the point I just made, which is one of the nice things that our customers have appreciated is we keep this pricing simple, which is when you acquire our appliances and the software to go with them, all of the services that I mentioned earlier, including firewall, NAT, the routing protocols, VRS, all of that is basically bundled into the license. There's no incremental SKUs or cost associated to enable those services. So basically it's bundled in with the software and available for everybody to use if and when they need them.
I do have a question that's a little bit more technical, so hopefully you'll be able to address this, Neil. How does its bandwidth aggregation work, and can you work with other subnetworks in other LAN ports?
So the way the bandwidth aggregation works is we're going to go through and we are going to take, you basically will build a service and you're going to identify which links are going to be a part of the pool, if you will, and then we will go through and start to use those. Now what we can do on the links, so let's say we have multiple links that are supporting our conduit, our tunnel that goes across. We can then use all of those links to handle one session. So this is a common question we get about the aggregation is underlying I might have 3 or 4 physical links that are supporting the session. Can I aggregate those up and have one maybe big session like a major backup go across all of them? The answer is yes, we can do that. And so when we aggregate, we truly aggregate and make all of that bandwidth available to you to use for one session or multiple sessions, depending on, once again, your priority and your policy. So at a high level, that is how we allocate or how you can utilize the bandwidth. Having different pools or IP pools, I need a little more information on that one to come back and give you a sound answer. So that one I'll hold off on.
Yep. And we can certainly put you in contact with our sales rep and solutions architect and address that from a technical perspective and potentially do a customized demo to look at that as well. And I have one final question. Neil, I'm going to throw this to you, which is, do we have any plans to introduce WAN optimization features into our products?
A roadmap question.
Yes.
So, we're usually very careful, as most vendors are, about talking about, the things we have in the pipeline. But I will say this, we recognize that WAN optimization is one of the more common branch services that's been deployed heavily for many, many years, and it's a critical one for most customers. And we have not stopped with our plans to incorporate new services into the portfolio that we have to offer. So right now I'll just say to the audience to stay tuned. for WAN opt and other services, we may have some announcements around those relatively soon.
Great, thank you. All right, we do have one other question that is a follow-up looking at the comparative advantages of Talari over PepLink. And actually this comes from Denz Francisco. Denz, I am going to have our solutions architect reach out to you to be able to give you kind of that overview, particularly in a competitive overview, so to give you the answers that you're looking for. So with that, gentlemen, we have no other questions that are coming in. I just wanted to thank both of you, our host, Neil, and of course our special guest, Tim Goblish from Benefis, for delivering today's session. I also want to thank all of you for attending and invite you to learn more about Talari's branch office simplification solution at our website, www.talari.com, or by scheduling a customized demonstration with us. This concludes our session today, and we look forward to sharing more information with you on our future sessions. So with that, I'll say good day and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. Thank you so much.